New Zealand, a place where your dental coverage pays for Botox too. Hi, I'm Nikki. Welcome. This is a story of what it's like working down under in New Zealand as a UX designer in tech. I've been living in New Zealand for 8 years now, so I feel super qualified to tell you all about this. So how to get a job in New Zealand in tech in IT, not only as a designer but also as an IT professional. There are many ways to get a job in New Zealand. The New Zealand government immigration website offers reasonably easy to digest information about the different visa pathways. I came to New Zealand on a resident visa, however it's pretty unusual nowadays because most people arrive on a work visa. It's worth checking out the long-term and the short-term skill shortage list. Many IT roles and job titles are listed there, so you will have a good chance to secure a visa. Okay, now speaking the language. Even though Maoris are the indigenous Polynesian people of Aotearoa who speak Te Reo, the professional work language is English, and we also use British English spelling here. I have met many foreigners who spoke an intermediate level of English here, and they were working mainly in the software engineering field. So if you have an IELTS exam and if you scored like 5.5 and 6, you still have a really good chance to get a visa in New Zealand. Of course, if you have a better level of English, you will have a higher chance to reach your career potentials and career goals in the future. So if you're not a native English speaker, I would highly recommend investing in learning and getting better at English. I did my last IELTS exam about 2 years ago and I scored 8.5, which means I have practically a native level of English. I firmly believe that my level of English contributed to my career here and how I was able to just move up every single year on the career ladder, and how I was able to, always get a higher salary. So whenever I moved a new job, I get 10, 15 or even 20% more money. I know it's not for everybody and maybe it's not that big of an interest to you right now, but it was very important to me when I came here. So if you speak a high level of English, then you can advance your career, secure jobs at a management level, and you can fully integrate into a culture, and you can understand and participate in office jokes, and you can make a couple of key friends. So if you're a non-native English speaker like me, then I would highly encourage you to keep learning English, be as good as you can. And when you arrive, you should pick up some Kiwi slangs as well as try your best to incorporate some Te Reo Maori in your writing and in your speaking. Like for example, kia ora. It's a greeting. It's very easy, sounds good, sounds cool, easy to pronounce. Also, as a designer and developer working in New Zealand, you must use typefaces that support macron. What is a macron? The macron is the horizontal line above any of the following vowels: A, E, I, O, U, all in Te Reo Maori. Why do you need to care about this? Because it is appropriate culturally, and some websites, some of the government websites especially, they use both languages, English and Te Reo. So you want to support the macron. The best and the easiest way to get a job in New Zealand is to apply for roles at companies you find on the accredited employers list. They can support your work or resident visa on successful application. Otherwise, you can only rely on luck to get your visa supported. Although it's not impossible to get your visa approved even if your future employer is not on the accredited employers list, because my partner and I, we are a living example of that. It just takes longer. So it's not impossible. When it comes to employment policies, New Zealand is very similar to any other countries. So they do prefer hiring locals, not necessarily residents, but people who are already in the country and have some kind of visa already. Because if they hire a non-resident or someone who's not local and who doesn't have a visa already approved, then somehow they need to justify why they didn't hire local. And it can be time consuming, and there is a lot of paperwork that goes into it. So where do you find a job? Check out the following international sites: Seek, LinkedIn, and Indeed. We do have a local listing site, it's called TradeMe. There are multiple pathways to get your citizenship as well, if this is that you're after. You can read more about it here. After being here for 5 years, I got my citizenship, but only because I came here on a permanent resident visa, which is very unusual. So most people get their citizenship after 7 years. Because first you're going to have a temporary resident visa, which is kind of a funny name, but it has like a traveling condition for 2 years. And after that, you will get your permanent resident visa. So that's the permanent. You know, you can come back anytime, basically. You don't need to have a citizenship. I know some countries do not allow dual citizenships. That's perfectly fine, because if you have a permanent resident visa, you can come and go, you can travel, and you can work here in New Zealand wherever you go. So you basically, with a permanent resident visa, you have exactly the same rights as a citizen. You can even vote. So one of the perks of having a New Zealand citizenship is you can go to Australia and live and work there legally. So you don't need to apply for another visa to work in Australia. While with your Kiwi resident visa, you won't be able to do that. You need to get another visa to work in Australia. The best chance to get your visa is if you have a few years of experience in any field. So if you already have 3 years of experience, then you will have no problem finding a job in tech here in New Zealand. Unfortunately, many applicants are even in New Zealand looking for an entry-level design position, especially since Victoria University runs its Master of User Experience Design program. I have a friend who spent 18 months job searching to get an entry-level design position. She just secured a job last year and she was a citizen, so it is tough. It's tough everywhere. Yeah, so your best chance to come to New Zealand if you already have a few years of experience. 3 is the best, because you're still young. New Zealand has many opportunities, but unfortunately for only experienced professionals. Entry level is always hard wherever you go, not only in New Zealand. So if you do not have any experience, don't give up. You can keep applying, but it's very unlikely that a company supports your visa if you're not already in New Zealand. This is just the reality. Also, as I said, I live in Wellington. You can try other cities. Auckland is much larger. It's over 1 million people living there, so obviously there are more job opportunities in Auckland than in Wellington. Or you can try the South Island. You know, you might have luck. There is Christchurch, Queenstown, Nelson. Those are the big ones. Oh, and Dunedin. Oh yeah, we should not forget about Dunedin. I've never been there though. Okay, your job application. So when it comes to a Kiwi style resume or CV, there are a few things to keep in mind. And maybe because I am European, so this might not be that unusual for you, but it was a little bit unusual when I came here. Okay, the few things to keep in mind is do not add the profile image to your resume. If you have a visa, then always state your visa status. You gotta start with a professional blurb, and this is your chance where you can explain why you are unique, and this is the way how you stand out from the other designers or IT professionals. You gotta keep your resume short, maximum of 2 pages. Mine is 1 page long and I have 10 years of experience. And the last bit is remove anything that would indicate how old you are. I tell you why. Even though New Zealand is super accepting, still you just would like to remove the chance that your resume creates some bias. Don't state any year there, don't put your date of birth there. They will only see that you have X years of experience, and that's good enough. They don't need to know how old you are, except if this is a job that requires your age. But I assume if you're looking for a job in IT, that's not really the case. Now, cover letter. If the application allows, always submit a cover letter. You need to customize your cover letter for each job. And I know this is actually hard work. It takes a while, but please do not use a template. When a hiring manager or when a recruiter reads it, they can tell this is a template that you use. So try to customize your cover letter. What I usually do, I put keywords from the job description and I put it in a cover letter. And I do the same thing with resume as well. I always rewrite my resume a little bit whenever I apply for a new job, because sometimes your resume and your cover letter go through a machine and they just pick up keywords. So if there is like a match or multiple matches, then an actual person will look at your resume. So always put those keywords in your cover letter and resume. And keep your cover letter short, maybe a few paragraphs, why you are interested in the job and why you would be a better candidate than the others. It can be informal as well, because Kiwis are, even in business settings, they are fairly informal how they communicate and say hello there or hi there instead of whom it may concern. Now, portfolio. You gotta have at least 2 case studies in your portfolio, but 3 is even better. And you need to make your first case study the best, always. Because most people only check out the first one. And if it's very detailed and nice, so we just look at the first case study and then we decide if we would like to interview you or not. When I was hiring a designer in my team, I was only looking at the first case study, and I already knew when I looked at the first one that I want to talk to this person. And I can tell you, most design managers and recruiters do the same thing. They're not going to check out all of your case studies. If you provide 7, well, that's great, but I would not recommend putting all of them in your portfolio, because some of them might be older, so they might not be as nice or relevant. Maybe they were great 8 years ago, but do you want to present that as one of the best portfolio pieces? Maybe not. Do not leave your best case study the last. Always put the best one first. Also, you do not need an online portfolio, so if you don't have one, it shouldn't stop you from applying for jobs. However, you do need a link to share with recruiters or HR. It could be a PDF uploaded to Dropbox or Google Drive. And one thing, you should avoid sending a Figma link. Why? It's just such a lazy design. So why make it harder to access and digest the content? Don't send Figma links, except if that's what they ask for, then do send Figma links. But otherwise, don't do that. Believe it or not everyone is familiar with Figma. Most companies have changed, and I see that they are using Figma here. Some companies are still using Sketch or Adobe Illustrator. Don't expect that all of the companies are using Figma in New Zealand, especially not government organizations. They are really slow to catch up. Okay, now reference and background check. Kiwis are big on references. They usually ask for 2 to 4 references. If you're outside of New Zealand and they're hiring someone from outside of New Zealand, they will wait. They calculate the time difference. They will call. They really check references. And no, you cannot just give your friends as references, because they usually ask for a LinkedIn profile as well and a company email address. So which has, that kind of ending. Instead of @gmail.com, it's like @0.com. Okay, work culture. So I moved to New Zealand from Ireland, where I lived just over 4 years. When I compare the Kiwi working culture to the Irish working culture, I don't really see a lot of difference. The only thing that I find different is people on the dot. They get up at 5 p.m. and it's 5:01 and nobody's in the office. Well, except if you work at an agency or consultancy, then you will have overtime. A lot. So just think about that. Consultancy and agency design work, it's hard everywhere, and it's still hard in New Zealand. So just because we have a pretty good work-life balance, consultancy and agency work excluded from that. It's not uncommon to do your work around your life. It's perfectly acceptable to take care of something within your working hours. Let's say you're helping a friend and you gotta take your friend to the airport, then you can do that. If you need to take your kid or your pet to the vet, not your kid, but your pet to the vet, then you can do that as well. The only thing is you always need to communicate. You just gotta tell them, oh, this is what I'm going to do, and nobody will look for you, and you just gotta make sure then you do that that time, like after work or before work. I mean, nobody will really check on you to make sure you really did that extra 30 minutes, but it's good for your own peace of mind. So the pandemic did not affect New Zealand in a way it affected the entire world, because we didn't have that many lockdowns and our restrictions were not that strict. Most companies are working remotely as well, so the hybrid working environment is very common, where you do 2 days in the office and 3 days from home. So that is fairly common. You just gotta do the 8 hours a day or whatever is in your contract, because some companies only work 37.5 hours a week. You just need to do your hours. It's perfectly fine if you want to start early, like maybe starting at 8 and finishing at 4. Again, you just gotta communicate and agree on that, and everybody knows you're not available after 4 p.m. It's also not uncommon to have condensed week, where people work 4 days a week, they work 10 hours a day. That's another possibility. It's a flexible working arrangement, flexible working environment. If you have a different need from a standard contract work, you just communicate, you can agree on that. So about work in general, my impression is life and family, they are more important than work in New Zealand, which is pretty nice. Annual leave, we are really lucky to have 4 weeks paid holidays every year. Most people do 2 holidays here, so they do one during the summer break, which is around the Christmas period, and the other one is during winter. So around June they take another 2 weeks just to break the year. And depending on which region you're in, you usually have another 10-12 days of public holidays as well. It's over 30 days a year when you don't need to work. It's pretty nice, especially if you compare that to North American 2 weeks of holidays in a year. Doesn't seem like a good number. The summer holiday, I guess if you live on the northern hemisphere, then the summer holiday will be very unusual for you. It was unusual for me as well. So as I mentioned, Kiwis usually take at least 2 weeks off during the summer around the Christmas period. It's not uncommon that most people and families add another 2 weeks to this, so they are on leave for a month. In general, nothing really happens recruitment-wise from mid-December to end of January. So if you apply around that time and if you don't hear anything for a few weeks, that is the reason. It's not like they have forgotten about you. It's not the case. People are very likely having a blast on the beach, drinking beers from a chili bin under a pohotukawa, or in a bed enjoying a Barbie. Notice period, well, it can vary. It really depends on the time you spend at the company and what kind of contract you had with them, if it's a full-time contract, part-time contract, or a permanent or a temporary position, and also the level that you were at the company. So for example, directors, managers, they might have longer notice periods instead of a standard 4 weeks. If you're a contractor and you do project work, then your notice period is usually 2 weeks. Medical and healthcare and sick leave. Well, you are entitled to have sick leaves, but you gotta check your contract because it's not that standard. So there are 5 days, 10 days sick leave, there are infinite sick leaves as well. I had contracts with all sorts of options. There is no standard in New Zealand. Unfortunately, I am super experienced with hospitalization in different countries. I've been to the hospital in the UK, in Hungary, in Ireland, in the US, Singapore, and in New Zealand. Did I miss anything? And hands down, the service is the worst in New Zealand. It's just really long hours, especially if you go to emergency, because whenever you go to the hospital, you gotta go through the emergency room. So you're just sitting there, and in a few hours, maybe a nurse will check on you, and then 5-6 hours wait, then you can talk to a doctor. If you're in some kind of pain, then you most likely will get paracetamol. I have never heard of paracetamol before coming to New Zealand, but it seems like this is the holy grail of medication here. Do you have a back pain? Have some paracetamol. Do you have a headache? Have some paracetamol. Do you have a toothache? Have some paracetamol. Did you have a cesarean? Oh, have some paracetamol. I am half kidding. It's a cheap but effective medication. And the GP, how it works here is you just gotta pick your GP. You kind of need to sign a paper that this is your GP and this is your medical center. And whenever you go and see a specialist, then they will ask, who's your GP? People know each other. It's a small country and Wellington is a small city. So there are only a few medical centers here, depending on which suburb you live in. I really like my GP, but it took a while to find him. Be picky. The price is pretty expensive. It really depends on the suburb where your GP is located and also your age. For a 50 minutes GP visit, you usually pay around $50 to $80. That is the price. But the good thing about the Kiwi healthcare is it's free. If you had an injury or accident, then there is ACC and then they pay for your recovery. A really small ACC fee is deducted from your salary, so you will never see that. But it's pretty nice. It's a great concept and you get free healthcare. There is a long wait list if you would like to see a specialist, so I would highly recommend to have a private insurance. It's a couple of $100s for the whole family, and it really depends on how many add-ons you have in the insurance. But there's this thing that if you have a dental coverage, if you have a dental add-on on your private insurance, then they cover your Botox as well, because dentists can administer Botox. So you just gotta ask for it. And hey, don't judge. I am closer to 40 than 30, so I need to think about this very soon. Taxes and other fascinating stuff. I find the New Zealand tax system is very straightforward. It's fair as well. If you earn more, you pay more tax. So the personal income tax you need to pay depends on your salary. So here are levels or rows as of April 2022. So the percentage varies from 10.5 to 39%. There are some key attractions of the Kiwi tax system. You can learn and read about it. I leave a link here with you in the description box. There are some tax exemption for new migrants as well. So if you're a new migrant, you might not need to pay tax on most of your overseas income for your first 4 years living in New Zealand. You may only have to pay income tax on what you earn in New Zealand. Again, I leave the information here as well. Also, you can read about the double taxation. It really depends on which country you're coming from. So when you arrive to New Zealand, you might become a tax resident here as well as somewhere else. If both countries tax their residents' worldwide income, you could be taxed twice on the same income. More info in the description box. Read it through because this might apply to you. Now the salary. How much can you earn in New Zealand? You might have heard how crazy the salary is for UX designers and software engineers in North America. I'm not sure about Europe, but sadly, this is not the case in New Zealand. You definitely get a good salary here, so don't get me wrong. So if you work in tech, if you work in IT as a designer, software engineer, project manager, it doesn't matter, you will have a great salary. So that's for sure. But companies don't really offer those Silicon Valley-like perks. We don't really have barista coffees except 2 companies that I know in Wellington. The indication of what you can earn as a full-time user experience designer goes like this. Up to 3 years of experience, you can earn from 70 to 90,000. 3 to 5 years of experience, you can earn between 85 to 110k. 5 to 8 years of experience, 100 to 165. Now there is a big range, and I tell you why. This is just depends on your negotiation skills. Obviously, companies always would like to pay less, but you can negotiate, and I would highly recommend, I would encourage you to negotiate whenever you take a job in New Zealand. You know, the worst thing that can happen, they say no, but don't push them too hard. So if you have 2 runs, like, 2 back and forth email conversations, they offer you 110 and then you say, no, I was thinking about 130, and then they say, oh no, we offer you 120 and this is the max. You might be able to say, well, how about 125? You have like 2 runs. I hope it makes sense. So it's like 2 email back and forth conversations that this is what you're looking looking for. And try to explain it that, hey, I've done my research, and based on my research, I think 130K for 5 years of experience would be a market rate for a user experience designer. Then over 8 years of experience and in design management, well, you should probably start doing some project-based work for hourly or project rates. I've been doing this for a while and my yearly income is over 200,000. It really depends on how much you ask. So you can negotiate hard, but you need to know the company's limit. And I would recommend to have the remuneration discussion upfront. So then you don't waste each other's time and this company can actually pay the salary that you're after. It's another famous saying here that people have a work-life balance here. Maybe not everyone believes in work-life balance, maybe some people believe in life, and work is a huge part of it. I'm not sure which group you're in. I would say you would have a balanced life if you take a job in New Zealand. How much work-life balance you'll have, it really depends where you work. And I need to emphasize that agency and consultancy work won't offer you work-life balance. That's just work. You can have life during weekends, on Sunday, because sometimes you gotta work on Saturdays as well. So choose wisely. You gotta read your contract, because none of the contracts that I had in the past in New Zealand were the same. Here's your red flag. If you see something like this, minimum working hours, 40 hours a week, that is your red flag. This means you need to do overtime, and you will do overtime. It's a guarantee. And overtime as a full-time employee won't be paid. If you're a contractor, it's good because you can bill for 60 hours a week. Read your contract. You will find as many micromanagers in New Zealand as outside of New Zealand. This is a personality trait. It's not like a national trait. So I had Kiwi managers and foreigners as managers. Yeah, they are different. It's more of a personality thing. If you're in the office, or if you communicate online on Teams or on Slack, whatever tools you use, if you exude good work attitude, then you will get the same back. If you piss people off at work, they won't like you, but they will not tell you that, because Kiwis are not really the most confrontational people. So they might not talk to you, and then you will be like, oh, something is off. And you go to them, especially if you have a direct communication style, like you're European, let's say, and you just want to talk to them. You tell them, hey, I feel that something is off, blah, blah, blah. And then they will say, no, everything is fine. They're not going to tell you that things are not fine. So if you feel that something is off, the reason is because something is off. In general, your attitude towards colleagues and companies will determine how successful you are in your career here in New Zealand. New Zealand is a small country, so it's very easy to build but also ruin your reputation. So just be mindful of that. After 8 years, I actually started to see the same people at work. I worked at one company with a software architect, and 2 years later, I was on a project with the same software architect. People get around, so try to be always professional, because you never know when you will be working with them again. Especially in Wellington, I cannot emphasize how small this city is. I would recommend you to join meetups. Like there is a UX meetup here, only one. So you go there like maybe 10 times a year and you will know all of the UX professionals in the city. Yeah. That's it. It's a small circle. It's only a few hundred of us here. People have a super indirect communication style here. If you have never been exposed to this, especially if you're not a native English speaker, then just watch the Kiwis. Watch them, how they talk, how they communicate, how they write things. And you just kind of need to acquire a superpower of reading between the lines. I'm not kidding. But you know, after a few years, it will be your second nature, and this is how you will be expressing yourself as well. It's really interesting because I am Hungarian, right? So I feel that I kind of have two personalities. I have a super direct personality in Hungarian. I also have this indirect Kiwi personality. So how I express myself in English is fairly indirect because I learned English in Ireland. I've been living and working in an English speaking environment for over 10 years now. So this is my second nature to express myself this way. I'm sure a lot of bilingual people can relate to this. You speak multiple languages and you will have multiple personalities. So just kind of on a scale. Still, you're the same person, but it just changes with the language you use. That's what I find. The other thing I wanted to mention is the tech industry is a multinational scene here in New Zealand. So there are Kiwis, like locals working in tech and IT. It's probably the most international industry here. So you will work with all sorts of nations. People think differently, and I think it's really nice. I find that people are generally friendly here, so when you go to a grocery shop or you just out and about and just have a chat with Kiwis, they are generally friendly. But to befriend a Kiwi, well, that takes some time. Me being here 8 years, I could only acquire 2 Kiwi friends. 2, like real Kiwis, not like me who are transplanted Kiwi. So it's like 1 Kiwi in every 4 years. That's my stats. All of my other friends are foreigners. Don't be hard on New Zealanders because they are friendly, but you just need to take the first step and probably the second and the third and the fourth as well. I find that, whenever I invite a Kiwi to visit my home, it's just kind of like, oh, so you invited me to you? I'm not sure if they visit each other actually. So, but I find that whenever I've done that, it was all sorts of like, they were surprised. Having foreigner friends is easier. Other foreigners, they are new to the country. They don't have the established family and friendships here. It's normal that they are also looking for relationships, friendships, situationships with other people. It's just easier to make friends with foreigners because they are in the same shoe with you. So it's just normal. But don't give up on making Kiwi friends. Just keep inviting them and they will get around eventually. Climate and nature. New Zealand is a stunning country. If you love the outdoors, then this is your country. It has everything, whatever you need. If you want to bike or ski or surf or hike, whatever you want to do, New Zealand has everything. But if you don't like the outdoors, well, you might not see the appeal of New Zealand. The sun is super strong. I have a very fair skin. I even wear sunscreen inside. You gotta wear sunscreen during the winter, during the summer. You gotta have a hat. Probably if you have, like more pigmentation in your skin, you are not that prone to sunburn, but I am, so I always protect myself from the sun. And the sun is just so strong, so I feel that after 5 minutes like my skin is burning. That's the sensation I'm getting. So I don't do sunbathing or anything like that, but we have beautiful beaches. So if this is your thing, then you will like it here. Transportation. In New Zealand, most people have a car, but finding a parking spot in a CBD is super hard and very expensive. It's a few dollars per hour depending on where you would like to park. Most people who come to the office, they usually carpool. They have a long-term parking, like they rent a parking spot in a parking garage or just in an apartment building. Like in my apartment building, we have a few spots that is for rent. It's a few $100s and it's really worth it. You can always use it even during the weekends if you have something to do in a CBD. We do have trains as well. I actually have never lived on a train line, but I heard that they run really smoothly if they run. Whenever an earthquake happens, then they need to structurally assess the rails if they are still good to go and they don't need to repair anything on the rails. So it's a little bit tricky, I heard, but as I said, I never lived close to a train line, so I didn't really use it in the past. Most people use a car or a bus to commute, but you need to remember when you see a bus, you gotta wave to the bus driver to stop, otherwise they just leave you at the bus stop. So that's very important. Also, the other thing, whenever you leave the bus, you gotta thank the driver. So you say usually, thanks driver. Also, people who live in a CBD and they also work in a CBD, those people tend to walk. Things are very close to each each other, especially here in Wellington. You can get away without a car, but if you would like to discover New Zealand, what's happening outside of Wellington, for example, then you gotta have a car. You can rent one during the weekend. It makes your life more comfortable. And earthquakes. If we talk about New Zealand, then we need to talk about earthquakes as well. We have smaller and larger ones multiple times a day. You don't really feel the smaller ones. Are you going to be comfortable with earthquakes? Probably not. Especially if you're coming from a country that doesn't shake. Drop, cover, hold is your mantra. So you just get under a desk or a table and then you wait until the shake stops and then you can come out. If you're in the office, you wait someone to tell you, yeah, this is safe to go or what you need to do. It's good to have some emergency package in the office as well, you know, like a walking shoe and water and some snack and a torch and first aid kit, things like that. If something happens and you know you might need to walk home because there is no transportation. I mean, it didn't happen in the last 8 years while I'm here, but you just gotta have that emergency kit. And it's also advised that you have 1 week worth of food and water at home as well for your whole family, including pets. So just keep in mind that the larger buildings in the CBD, they sway. I cannot really tell what kind of feeling is that, but we have a museum, Te Papa. There is a house that simulates the earthquakes. So I would highly recommend to visit Te Papa and try the house, what it feels like. So then you know when it's coming that, oh, there is a shake, and you drop, cover, hold. And if you felt an earthquake but you're uncertain, well, you gotta check this site. It's called GeoNet. So if there is a shake, it's on the website within no time. There are so many advantages of living in New Zealand and working in New Zealand, so I think it would be another video. There is only one disadvantage that I can think of, and this is New Zealand is like really the end of the world. So it is just so far from everything. We say that we are so close to Australia, but if I got in the car and I drove 50 km per hour, I would reach Australia in 50 hours. So that's how close we are. Is it close? You can decide. Never mind, we cannot drive to Australia. We gotta fly or using a boat, but good luck on the Tasman Sea. Since I moved here in 2014, I've been living in Wellington, but I traveled around both for professional and personal reasons. In general, New Zealand is a safe place. I have never felt unsafe when I was walking home from the CBD, city center, CBD. When I arrived to New Zealand, one of the biggest thing was for me when I was walking down on the famous Cuba Street, that how clean it was. But since then, I don't know, it might be the Wellington Council, I don't know, I don't want to point fingers, but it's just not that clean anymore. So I think that kind of appeal just disappeared. Cleanliness is a very personal thing and it's super subjective, but me as an Eastern European person, I'm kind of a clean freak. I like things that are really tidy and neat. Compared to Eastern Europe, Wellington is just not that clean. Not as clean as the place where I came from. This is one of the windiest cities in the world and you will never have a good hair day. Paying for blowouts and things like that, don't do that. It's not worth it. There is this famous saying in New Zealand, which is, you cannot beat Wellington on a sunny day. Which reminds me of a famous Irish saying, you cannot beat Dublin on a sunny day. So go figure. You cannot beat any cute city on a sunny day, eh? The things I have shared here is just my experience. If you talk to other people, they might have different experience as well. Let me know if you have any questions and I will answer to the best of my knowledge. Thank you for watching and I hope see you again. Bye. By the way, if you are looking to relocate and find a job in New Zealand and you are Hungarian, a good friend of mine is writing a blog about living in New Zealand, working in New Zealand. She has a super fun style. This is only for Hungarians because she writes in Hungarian. So if you would like to learn more about the culture and also have a different perspective from mine, then I would highly recommend checking out her website.